All right, let's dive into this one. Despicable Me 3, huh? Looks like we've got a whole stack of IMDb reviews, folks who actually sat through it.
And well, let's just say opinions are all over the map on this one.
Yeah, some are raving, some are like, meh, and some sound like they want their money back.
That's the fun part, though, right? We get to sift through it all, figure out what's going on.
Exactly. So our mission today is to help you, dear listener, decide if Despicable Me 3 is worth your precious time.
You know, it's interesting. Beyond just good or bad, this might tell us something about the franchise itself.
Oh, I like that. Like how our tastes in animation might be changing.
Exactly. Like what's hitting, what's missing the mark. So overall, the average rating kind of hovers around a 6 or 7 out of 10.
Okay, not great, not terrible. So middle of the road territory. What's working? What did people consistently like?
Animation, hands down. Reviewers are using words like wonderful, visually well done.
Ah, so it's at least pretty to look at.
Oh yeah, the visuals are getting a lot of love. People specifically point out the bright colors, super detailed backgrounds.
Gotcha. So we've got a visual feast, but a movie needs more than just looks. How's the soundtrack? Did it measure up?
Music is a huge plus,
Yeah.
especially for anyone who, well, might have lived through the 80s.
Oh, you're speaking my language now.
Think Michael Jackson, Madonna, all those big hits.
Talk about a nostalgia trip. So we've got stunning visuals, a killer 80s soundtrack, and of course it wouldn't be Despicable Me
The
without...
Minions. Yep, they're still a big draw for a lot of folks, even after their own movie.
It's amazing they haven't worn out their welcome yet. Although, speaking of that, you mentioned some reviewers were talking about Minion fatigue. What's that all about? Have they overstayed their welcome, or is it something bigger, like our sense of humor is evolving?
That's a great question. Maybe that kind of humor, which was a hit in the earlier films, it's just not landing the same way for some people anymore.
Interesting. So, the Minions, a bit of a gamble. You might love them, you might be over them. Okay, what about the villain this time around? Balthazar Bratt, right? Voiced by Trey Parker from South Park, no less. What's the verdict on him?
Mixed bag, honestly. Some find him entertaining, others not so much. A bit bland, maybe? Which is interesting, right?
Wow.
Because he's got this whole over-the-top 80s thing going on.
So maybe that 80s persona, visually it works, but comedically not quite hitting the mark for everyone.
Could be. It's not just about what people liked or disliked, but why. And that's where this deep dive gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm with you. So far, we've got amazing visuals, 80s music that's either going to be your jam or make you cringe, and Minions that are a bit of a wild card. What about the stuff that didn't work so well?
Most common complaint. The story feels way too crowded. Like they tried to cram in a million plot lines.
Oh, too many cooks in the kitchen.
Exactly. And a bunch of reviewers called out the pacing, saying it felt jumpy, rushed.
Like they were trying to do too much in too little time? Makes sense. And then there's Gru's twin brother, Drew. It seems like he's the most divisive element of the whole film.
Oh yeah, love him or hate him kind of character. Some thought he was charming. Others found him completely unnecessary.
Yeah, some of the reviews weren't pulling any punches. I saw one that said, "The writers have clearly run out of ideas." Ouch.
That's harsh. But it does make you think, what about the story led them to that conclusion? Just the overstuffed plot? Or is it deeper than that?
Okay, you had some quotes pulled out that I thought were especially colorful. One reviewer compared Drew to a character from, get this, Gothic horror literature.
Now, that's a visual I wasn't expecting. And then there was another one wondering if Gru's mom really thought she got the second picked twin.
Oh, that's funny. It's those little details that make reading reviews so fun. You get a real glimpse into the person behind the words.
And those seemingly throwaway lines, they can actually lead to some insightful stuff. Like comparing Drew to a Gothic horror character. Does that mean his personality or design clashes with the whole Despicable Me vibe?
Okay, that's a great example of what we're trying to do here. Not just listing pros and cons, but really analyzing what those opinions tell us. About the film, about the franchise as a whole, even.
Exactly. So let's take those criticisms about the crowded plot. What does that say about where the franchise is going? Are they trying to please too many people, or is it tougher to keep things fresh and original after so many movies?
Yeah, you've also got Lucy figuring out the whole stepmom thing. Agnes is on a quest for a unicorn that, spoiler alert, turns into a uni-goat. And the Minions are up to their usual shenanigans. Is that a sign they're trying to do too much in one movie?
It's a lot to juggle, for sure.
Yeah.
And this brings us to a key question for you, the listener. What are you hoping to get out of this movie? Lighthearted adventure, familiar characters, maybe a blast of 80s nostalgia? Despicable Me 3 might hit the spot.
But If you're looking for a really tight plot, deep character development, groundbreaking humor.
Maybe adjust your expectations a bit. This one seems more about entertainment than, deep meaning.
It really does sound like they're trying to walk that fine line. Keep it familiar, but add new stuff, balance the heartwarming moments with the funny stuff.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance. One thing that consistently gets praise, though, is the voice acting.
Oh yeah, you've got Steve Carell, Kristen Wiig, Trey Parker. That's a solid
And
cast.
they seem to really deliver, bringing those characters to life, giving them personality.
Speaking of personality, let's talk about those minions. Are they up to their usual antics, or are people getting tired of them?
It's a mixed bag, honestly. Some people are still finding them hilarious, others not so much. It's almost like they've become this, cultural litmus test.
A litmus test. How so?
Like, your reaction to the Minions says a lot about your sense of humor, what you want from an animated movie.
I get it. So maybe that kind of humor, the slapstick, the physical comedy, it's just not appealing to everyone anymore.
Could be. Or maybe it's just overexposure. We've had 2 Despicable Me movies, a Minions spin-off, who knows how many shorts and merchandise. It's got to get old at some point, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, so they're a wild card. You might love them, you might roll your eyes. What about Balthazar Bratt? Does he live up to the villain legacy?
It really seems to come down to how people feel about that 80s shtick. Some thought it was hilarious, others thought it was a bit much.
Interesting. That whole 80s nostalgia thing, it's a big part of the movie, but it seems to be dividing people. What do you think it is about that era that makes people react so strongly?
Maybe it's a generational thing.
Yeah.
People who grew up in the 80s, like you, it's a chance to relive those memories, the music, the fashion, the whole vibe. But for younger viewers who don't have that connection, it might just seem dated.
Right, like they don't get the appeal.
Yeah.
So Despicable Me 3 is taking a bit of a gamble here, leaning into that nostalgia. It might work for some, but alienate others.
Yeah, and that risk extends to the film's overall message. We talked about the potential for exploring deeper themes like family with Gru's twin brother, but did the reviewers feel like the movie delivered on that?
Good question. Did they feel like it had anything meaningful to say about family? Or was it all just surface level stuff, sibling rivalry, typical family drama?
That's where those criticisms about the crowded plot come back in. It seems like they were juggling so many storylines, so many character arcs, that some of those deeper themes might have gotten lost.
So Despicable Me 3, good intentions maybe, but maybe they spread themselves too thin. Did the reviewers at least think it was entertaining?
It sounds like, at the very least, people agree that it's visually impressive. And there are definitely some funny moments. Even those who weren't crazy about the plot or thought some characters were overused, they still admitted to having fun with it.
So even if it's not the most, I don't know, profound or groundbreaking film in the franchise, it still delivers on that basic level of animated entertainment.
Exactly. And for some people, that's enough. They're not looking for a deep philosophical movie. They just want to have a good time. Escape for a couple of hours.
Nothing wrong with that. Sometimes we overthink things. Sometimes a movie is just a movie.
Right. We get so caught up in analyzing the themes and stuff that we forget to just enjoy the story.
And Despicable Me 3, with the visuals, the music, the wacky characters, it definitely gives you that opportunity to disconnect from the real world for a bit and just laugh.
Definitely. But that doesn't mean we can't appreciate it on a deeper level too, right? The stuff we talked about, the nostalgia, keeping a franchise fresh, exploring family dynamics, those are all worth thinking about.
So even if Despicable Me 3 doesn't have all the answers, it gives us something to talk about.
Exactly. Which is, the power of storytelling, right? Even a silly animated movie can make you think, make you question things.
Okay, so we've gone through the highs and lows, the animation, the music, the characters, the deeper themes. You're probably wondering, is it worth my time?
Well, here's what we can say based on all these reviews. If you love the first 2 Despicable Me movies, you're probably going to enjoy this one too.
Especially if you're a fan of 80s music, that soundtrack alone might be worth the price of admission. Just, be prepared for a lot of Minions.
But if you're expecting something completely different, something really deep or profound, maybe adjust your expectations a little. Despicable Me 3 is more about having fun.
That's a good way to put it. Doesn't mean it's a bad movie. Just means it's focused on entertainment.
Right. And at the end of the day, the decision is yours, whether or not you want to watch it.
We've given you all the information, the good, the bad, the in-between. Now it's up to you to decide if Despicable Me 3 is something you want to see. It's funny how these kids' movies, you wouldn't think they'd be so I don't know, thought-provoking, but
I know, right? They kind of sneak up on you.
yeah.
And that's what's so cool about Despicable Me 3. It's got these different layers, you know?
Yeah, like on the surface, it's all slapstick and bright colors, perfect for the little ones.
Exactly. But then there's this whole other level with themes and questions that really resonate with adults.
It's like they're hiding grown-up ideas in a kid-friendly package.
Totally. And that's why they work for such a broad audience. You can just enjoy the show, or you can dig a little deeper and find stuff that makes you think.
We talked about Gru's brother, Drew, and the potential for some deeper family stuff. But then there's that whole overstuffed plot thing. Do you think maybe they tried to do too much? Maybe that's why some of those themes didn't get fully explored.
That's a good point. I mean, it's cool that they tried to give everyone their own little story.
Right, like Lucy's dealing with being a stepmom, Agnes is on her unicorn quest, the minions are, well, being minions.
Yeah, it's a lot. Maybe a bit too ambitious for one movie. Maybe some of that stuff would have been better in a TV show or something.
Ooh, a Despicable Me cinematic universe with each character getting their own spin-off. Now there's an idea.
Right. Okay, but what about those reviewers who said the writers were out of ideas? Is there any truth to that?
That's tough. Part of me wants to say they're being too harsh.
Yeah, but it does raise a valid point. How do you keep a franchise like this feeling fresh, you know?
Like, how many times can you tell the same basic story before it gets stale?
Exactly. And it's not just the plot, it's the characters too. How do you keep them growing without changing them too much? How do you bring in new characters that feel, I don't know, exciting, but not just the same old thing?
Yeah, those are big questions. And maybe Despicable Me 3 doesn't nail all of them.
True. But we also have to remember we're looking at a very specific set of opinions here. It's just a bunch of people on IMDb. Their thoughts might not reflect everyone's experience.
So take those criticisms with a grain of salt, I guess?
Exactly. Even if a movie doesn't click with everyone, it doesn't mean it has no value.
Right. You can acknowledge the flaws and still appreciate the good stuff.
Absolutely. And it sounds like Despicable Me 3 has plenty of good stuff. The animation, the music, the voice acting, people loved all that. And the humor, even if it's not groundbreaking, seems to work for a lot of folks.
It's all about expectations, I think. If you go in expecting some, like, life-changing masterpiece, yeah, you're going to be disappointed.
But if you just want to have fun, watch something light and colorful and catchy, then you'll probably have a good time.
Well said. I think that's a perfect way to wrap things up. Despicable Me 3, like any movie, it's all subjective. What one person loves, another person might hate.
It all comes down to personal taste, what you want from a movie.
Exactly. So to our listener, we say, go into Despicable Me 3 with an open mind. Don't let the bad reviews scare you off, but don't expect too much either.
Just relax, enjoy the ride. And hey, if you find yourself singing along to Take On Me or thinking about what it means to be a family, well, that's just a bonus.
And if you end up hating it, hey, come back and tell us all about it. We're always up for a good debate.
That's the best part of doing these deep dives. Sharing perspectives, having good conversations, exploring the world of film together.
And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Despicable Me 3.
Until next time.